I mentioned before that religion is dying, but I didn't say how or why. Of course, I'm focusing only on the most dangerous religions, the Abrahamic religions. Why would I focus my attention towards Jainism, for example, while it made minimal harm to humanity? So the Abrahamic religions, each one of them will die on its own pace. And I'm making this video just to present my point of view. And I will start with this question. Why Islam will be the first of the Abrahamic religions to die? For now, I'll give only one reason, and I hope I can present my point as clearly as possible. When we take a close look at religious scriptures, like the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, a very important point pops up in your mind. Literalism. The interpretation of words in their literal sense. Do people believe in these words as the true and the literal words of the divine? So to answer this question, we have to delve into the realm of statistics. So let's first start by Judaism. How many of the American Jewish population believe that the Torah is the literal words of God? According to the Pew Research Center, in 2014, 11% of Jews take the words of the Torah literally, which is about the same percentage of Orthodox Jews living in the US. The rest believe that the Torah are the words of God but should not be taken literally, or that the Torah is written by men. In Israel, the percentages are much higher. According to the Gutam Institute of Applied Social Research, 55% believe in the literal revelation of the Torah by God at Sinai. 50% of the Jewish people believe that they were chosen by God among all the peoples, and only 5% of the total Jewish population in Israel say they observe no religious practices whatsoever but still nonetheless consider themselves as Jews. Before moving on to Christianity, I want to address something first in the Jewish religion, the Hebrew language. What does it mean to the Jewish people? The Torah scroll, which the Jews consider to be the holiest book within Judaism, which is made up of the 5 books of Moses. It's written in Hebrew in every synagogue across the world. It must be written by a specially trained pious person who writes it down the same way that it was written centuries ago before the invention of printing. The Hebrew language remained for centuries the main language for religious services. For Jews, Hebrew is the language of the Jewish people. It signifies their bondage and ties them to their ancestral tribe. In other words, if a Jewish person did not learn Hebrew, it will make him less of a Jew. Now I'll address the same question for Christianity. How many Christians believe that the Bible is the literal words of God? According to a Gallup poll in 2014, about 28% of American Christians believe so, and that is 3% decrease from the 2007 poll and around 10% less from the polls conducted in the 1970s. So the rate is declining, which is a nice thing. And when we ask about the language, do Christians care about the language that the Bible was written in? No. The main language that the New Testament was written in was Greek, and the Old Testament was written, as we said before, in Hebrew, and parts of it in Aramaic. And Christians now do not care about learning any of these languages. In fact, they care more about translating it to every other language. Almost in every country, the Bible is being read, used in the churches and religious ceremonies by the language of that country. And that goes back to the idea that Christians want to spread the religion as far as they can, unlike the Jewish people. So when the Bible got translated over and over from languages other than the original languages, the idea of biblical literalism became absurd. Even the Pope himself in 2011 openly criticized it. When it comes to Islam, the literalism of the Quran is essential. Almost every Muslim agrees that the Quran is the word of God. I used to believe so when I was a Muslim. They might disagree a little on how to interpret it. And here where you have your limitations. The Quran is vague in lots of issues where Muslim scholars have a little bit of freedom to interpret them in various ways. But what about the issues where the Quran is very obvious? Most scholars have to interpret them in their literal meanings. For example, but those wives from whom you fear that they will not obey you, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally, beat them. Muslim scholars might debate about the idea of beating up women. So they might say, for example, beat them in an unharmful way. But still, the Quran is overtly degrading women, and Muslim scholars cannot reform that. Why? And here's the dilemma of literalism. Because this is what God clearly said. How can a human change the words of God? Because definitely there's no one smarter or more knowledgeable than God. So the words of the Quran stay the same with their obvious meanings. What about the Arabic language? What does it mean to Muslims? And here we have something in common between Judaism and Islam. For Muslims, including the non-Arab ones, reading the Quran, praying, and doing almost all religious rituals must be in Arabic. Learning Arabic language is essential for every Muslim. It is even considered a sin if a non-Arabic Muslim speaker prayed in his mother tongue and refused to make any effort to learn Arabic. In other words, a Muslim who cannot speak Arabic is less of a Muslim than one who can speak it. Otherwise, how can you understand the words of God? And the only reason why Muslim scholars agree on translating the Quran is to spread the religion to non-Muslim foreigners. But if a foreigner converted to Islam, then he should learn Arabic. According to the Pew Research Center, 50% of American Muslims interpret the Quran literally. And in Arabic-speaking countries like in Egypt, 78%, and Jordan, 76% of Muslims interpret the Quran literally. And the common thing between Christianity and Islam is that both of them want to spread the religion. But Islam will not survive as Christianity, because Christianity accepts reforms in an ever-changing world, while literalism is not in the way. However, Islam refuses reforming because of the way it perceives the Arabic language. It is mentioned 11 times in the Quran that God chooses the Arabic language as a bless to the world, especially the believers. And here's an example.
It's an Arabic Quran without any deviance that they might become righteous.
And this example shows why Muslim scholars always encourage Muslims to learn Arabic. Because if they left the Quran to be translated freely and be interpreted through translations, then the original words of God might lose their meanings. As I said, Judaism and Islam both perceive their languages in the same way. But why the percentage of Jews who take the Torah literally is much less than the Muslims who interpret the Quran literally? In my opinion, the Jewish community lived most of its recent history within communities with completely different beliefs. Communities that the Jews were able to mingle and interact with. Unlike the Muslims who lived mostly through their history in communities that are strictly or predominantly Muslims. And it is hard to modify or change your ideas while everyone around you thinks the same as you. And as an example to prove my point, Jews who lived in Israel, which is mostly a Jewish community, 55% of them take the Torah literally compared to 11% in America, which is a blend of different cultures and religions. And here is something else that Judaism has that will keep it alive for longer than Islam. An aspect that not any other Abrahamic religion stressed on it as much as Judaism does. Tribalism. And here's an example. When members of the Abrahamic religions were asked how they perceive their houses of worship, in both Christianity and Islam, more than 80% said their institutions protect and strengthen morality in society. However, 89% of Jews said that their houses of worship and other religious organizations bring the Jewish people together and strengthen community bonds. They said nothing about morality, they said nothing about spreading their ideology to different ethnicities. Unlike Christianity and Islam, tribalism is the core of Judaism. It's a religion that's strictly built to keep the tribe. That's why they have no intentions to preach the religion to anyone else. And that's why Judaism will live longer than Islam. Personally, when I was studying the Quran, it was unimaginable to me to think that these words are not the exact words of God. And I should do my best to understand them literally the way they are. Not only me, almost every Muslim living in the same culture that I come from thinks the same thing. So will reform ever work for Islam? Let me give you one example as an answer for that question. In 2013, an Egyptian Muslim scholar called Islam al-Bahiri started a TV show mainly talking about reforming the Islamic ideology. And what happened to him? Did he succeed in changing people's mind towards the religion?
ويكون الحديث له شواهد ومش ضد القرآن ومش ضد العقل. وهم اللي حطوا على فكرة علماء الحديث الأوائل ضابط أو شرط العقل. العقل الجمعي على فكرة. هيقول لك عقل مين؟ العقل. في حاجات لا تصدق.
Maybe on a minimal scale. However, in 2015 he was jailed for a year upon the charges of blasphemy. And by the way, he didn't even dare to question the literalism of the Quran. He only questioned the literalism of some of the hadiths. To me, as an atheist, I think he's a Muslim reformer who tried to transform Islam from a horrible ideology to a little bit less than that. But to Muslims, he is a blasphemous and should keep his mouth shut. This is why I think that reforming Islam, at least in the Arab world, will have a little impact in changing the Islamic ideology and the Islamic behavior. It's a tool that we can use, but it's not the main one. The main tool to use is to destroy the Islamic ideology completely by showing how false and horrific and inhumane it is. So the simple answer for the question I asked at the beginning of this video is, why Islam will die the first? Because of literalism. It will be the main reason behind the fast death of Islam. Religions and ideas are more like species, whether they will adapt to the constant changing environments or they will die. And in the information age, knowledge travels faster than reforming a religion, and bright minds can search for answers easier than ever. In the age of information, there is no lie that can stay alive or hidden for a long time, especially when it cannot be reformed. And the best way to reform Islam is leaving it. Thank you for watching, and if you like my channel, you can support it through Patreon, and see you next video. Peace.